I do want to give just a small disclaimer before this next presentation. There are a couple of images in here that could be considered graphic, but this is also an educational presentation, so you may want to leave, but you may also be a square. Emily Fleitz is from Kettering, Ohio. She went to school at the American University in Washington. We're applauding for Kettering, or I wasn't sure where to stop. She recently moved back to Dayton after spending a year teaching English in Malaysia. She's traveled all over the world and loves talking about periods everywhere she goes. Women's reproductive organs have been in the news a lot the last few months, the last few years, whether they're being legislated or regulated or insulted by Donald Trump. It seems that everybody has an opinion about them one way or another. Emily has some very interesting and in-depth opinions, and she's going to share them with you now.
Practice enough, so I have a script here, but we can go ahead and just get over it together. Can we all say menstruation together on the count of 3? 1, 2, 3. That was awesome. That makes me really happy. Thank you. So I'm going to spend the next 6 minutes talking about it. I know it's not something that we usually talk about. Some people love it. Menstruation is also known as a period, menses, or menorrhea, and it's a monthly process of a woman shedding the lining of her uterus. But of course, most women aren't going around talking about menorrhea. We use other words to describe menstruation because it makes us feel uncomfortable. My favorite euphemism is the communists are in the fun house, which apparently people say in Denmark. I love talking about it though, and I have no problem bringing it up in conversation with just about anyone. Periods are normal. Nearly half the world's population menstruates. Most women use pads, tampons, or menstrual cups during their period. Personally, I use a menstrual cup, and it's one of the best purchases that I've ever made, but that's another topic altogether. Most Western women use tampons. The average American woman will use more than 16,000 tampons in her lifetime. The first commercial tampon was available in the 1930s, but tampon-like products have been used around the world for centuries. Women in ancient Rome, it's been said, fashioned their own tampons out of wool. Indonesian women are believed to have used vegetable fibers to staunch menstrual flow, while rolls of grass are said to have been used in parts of Africa. Women in developing countries may not have the funds or access to commercial hygiene products, so they make their own using rags, newspaper, plant material, anything you can think of, or they just go without it altogether. UNICEF reports in countries where menstrual hygiene is taboo, girls in puberty are typically absent for 20% of the school year. Okay, this is a quick aside since somebody asked. In Malaysia, there's a type of ghost called the balan-balan. It removes its head and guts at night and seeks out dirty menstrual blood. When I told my students I hadn't been sleeping well because I was hearing strange noises in my apartment, they said I had one of these ghosts haunting me. They recommended that I sleep with scissors next to me while I was on my period so I could cut the ghost's guts if she came in through my window. And yes, I actually did sleep with scissors next to me. So anyway, while I was in school, I interned with an awesome NGO called Machik, which works to develop opportunities for education and innovation on the Tibetan Plateau. Every year they have a summer camp for rural Tibetan kids run by Chinese and international volunteers. It's kind of a big deal because Tibetans and Chinese aren't really known as having the best relationship in the world, but that's also another presentation. Health class is always a part of the camps. One year they asked a room full of girls if they knew what a period was before they got one, and only one girl raised her hand. Machik realized that most young women had never talked about menstruation, and when they had their first period, it was a total shock to them. I heard this story, and for my capstone at American, I decided to teach the girls at the summer camp about menstruation. I called my project Plateau Pads. I fundraised over $3,000, and maybe even some of you in the audience helped me with that, so thank you. I made 50 trilingual health books and designed a reusable pad. It was also way more fun than writing a research paper. The theme of the camp was going green, so making reusable pads really made sense for the camp. They would not only be environmentally friendly, but also more hygienic than many of the commercial products available in China. Actually, someone told me that if you use a Chinese pad, you'd have to change it 1.5 hours to keep sanitary. The camp was held in Xining at Lake Qinghai. In Tibetan, it's called Sonongpo, and it's the largest landlocked lake in China. The camp was awesome. A lot of kids had never even left their hometown before, and it was really cool that they were able to get to know each other in this setting. It was sold as English immersion, and as you can see, I did help teach an English class. The camp was really about Tibetans and Chinese learning about each other and kind of celebrating their differences and seeing where that they were wrong about each other. A couple weeks into the camp, we separated the boys and the girls into different tents. The boys talked about boy stuff, whatever that was, And girls heard from this local woman who was in her first year at university. She was awesome. She talked about how women in her village knew nothing about health care and about how one had died because of an infection that could have easily been avoided. That woman knew that this was a problem that could be solved with health classes. So she went around her village and gathered groups of women together. They talked about simple stuff, like the best way to wash yourself, even if you can't shower every day. She said it was important for women to take care of each other. After she spoke, each girl got her own pad kit with cloth and needles and thread and Hello Kitty underwear. We talked about what menstruation is and how frequently you should change pads and how to properly wash and dry them. Then we started listening to Beyonce and we started sewing. As we worked on the pads, girls started opening up. After that class, girls would invite me into their dorm rooms to drink tea and sew and talk a little bit. Their English wasn't very good, but I felt like we had a special chance to bond with each other. I felt really great about the project when one of the girls told me she was going to make extra pads to give to her sister and her mother. Those are some great Chinese snacks that I enjoyed while I was there. Unfortunately, the camp ended abruptly. NGOs need special permission to work in Tibet, which we had. But the local police didn't really understand what we were doing, and they were worried about protecting themselves from higher authorities. A week before the end of the camp, we were told to leave. They came in that morning and then they told us we needed to load up on buses and leave. And after that, I never saw any of the girls or the other campers again. So I'm always thinking about them and wondering how they're doing. I talked to some of them on WeChat, because of course Facebook's outlawed in China. The girl with the peace sign there, she's really smart and awesome. She's at a university now studying Tibetan literature. I'm not really sure how well the program worked or what its effect on them really was. But there's a lot of other stuff going around the world. You might have heard of this guy. He's the only man to have ever had a period. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. He's from India, and he designed a pad made from banana fiber, and he's tested it by wearing a bag that drips sheep's blood into his underwear, and that's how he tested it, because he couldn't find anyone else to do it. It's really cheap to buy, and its production is providing new jobs for women. And then last night I saw this great idea on Facebook. It's a contraption that discreetly washes and dries menstrual pads. A lot of girls hide the wet pads under their beds because they're embarrassed to hang them up to dry outside. And then they just wear them when they're wet, which is, of course, really dangerous. A team of folks at this design college in California invented this, which is really awesome. And I also think we have a long way to go in the West, too. This woman created a photo project about periods, and I think it's really beautiful. She posted this on Instagram, and Instagram took it down because it didn't meet community standards. I don't think periods should be censored. A lot of us in this very room experience them, and I've seen how menstruation can connect women around the world. So thanks for talking about it with me.